Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
When we think of networking, when we think of having a network, when we think of building relationships, we think of our minds go to these positive experiences where everything's just working beautifully and lots of wonderful benefits come from that. And that's the end game, right? That's what you want. But that's not reality. That's not reality at all. I can't think of a time when, this goes back to when I first started working at 14, 15 years old, having coworkers where everything was wonderful. There was always something. There was always somebody. It might have been one particular person all the time or somebody on different days. Who knew? And, I'm not perfect. I'm sure the same can be said of me. I know the same can be said of me. Part of building great relationships is being able to deal with the times when things aren't necessarily when you're not really going with the current. Let's put it that way, right? You feel like things are off. At any rate, I didn't stumble across, it was emailed to me, an article by Ken Lazar, and he's the owner of Ability Professional Network. I've known Ken, I first heard of Ken back during the financial meltdown in 2008. People were losing their jobs right and left. Ken was in employment services and dedicated a lot of his time to helping people get back on their feet. He had an organization called Scioto Ridge Job Networking Group, which he ultimately then turned into Ability Professional Network. He's an executive recruiter for the sales profession, works in the sales profession. I will put a link to this article in the show notes, and you'll be able to connect with Ken. It's right on his website. But anyhow, I'm on his mailing list. I've been on his mailing list. He and I have been on podcasts together. We've done a lot of things together. And he wrote this article called 10 Ways to Build Positive Relationships with Difficult People. So I want to I'm not going to read it for you. Again, I'll link to it. But there's 10 great thoughts here. And much of his world is dealing in the employment world where you're going to the office and you're dealing with the same people time and again. And so you might say, well, this list doesn't really apply to me because I'm that solopreneur or I'm that business person and I'm dealing with lots and lots of different people. I would argue it's worse. My wife has worked in the corporate world for 30 plus years. I joke with her, she deals with the same 3 or 4 people every day. And so that, there's certainly a challenge in that because it's the same 3 or 4 people, and sometimes you're slotted with somebody you don't like or don't get along with, and you just really need to deal with it. For me, it's 3 or 4 new people every day, and I need to be able to read people quickly and get a sense as to what they're about as soon as I can. So anyhow. Going down Ken's list here, Ken Lazar's list. First thing he has on here is get out of the office. Basically, when you're having these situations, and again, this applies in the entrepreneurial world as well, get it away from the professional settings. Go have lunch. Just have a cup of coffee with somebody. Learn about people. I find that whenever I have the opportunity to learn about somebody, what their story is, it just brings up a sense of empathy for me, and hopefully it does for them as well. You start to realize, okay, this person is just another person, They've got kids who adore them. They have financial challenges. We all have financial challenges. because we tend to spend to the limits of our means, right? So you get people out of those situations, out of a business situation, and um, it just relaxes things. So that's the first thing. The second thing he has on his list is apologize and mean it. If you've done something, and I know I have, uh, it's not easy to do, but apologize if you recognize you've done something wrong. Along those same lines, take a hard look at yourself and say, okay, you know what? Maybe I did. Maybe there was something here. We tend to be biased towards our own actions, towards our own feelings, and kind of give ourselves grace often in these situations when we might not need it or deserve it. So there's nothing wrong with apologizing and saying, I might have a part in this. Again, help lower the temperature. Um, Three, have difficult conversations respectfully. A couple of my franchisees did some training on the book Crucial Conversation, Kayleen Marshall and Paula Ankley. Great book. If you get a chance, Crucial Conversation, get it, listen to it, read it however you want to take it in. But it's really a deep dive into how you can have conversations, these difficult conversations with people, and do it in a respectful way that kind of keeps the temperature down. Four, don't vent or gossip. That's I remember working and a lot of this when I worked in corporate, you know, standing around the water cooler, coffee machine, whatever, going to lunch and just venting about work. It was fun, but it wasn't right. It made you feel better because everybody kind of commiserated, but it never really solved anything, to be perfectly honest. And you had to wonder if when you're gossiping about other people, if they're gossiping about you, it's counterproductive. So you just need to kind of walk away from that. Uh, Change your perspective. Look for people's strengths and talents. Again, that gets back to the first thing of getting out of the office and getting to know people. And it's like, okay, I understand this person, right? They've got challenging kids. They've got a child who's on the spectrum. They've got parents who, they're trying to deal with getting them into a home. Because of this, the spouse is not working, and because of that, finances are strained. Okay, I start to get this, and just change your perspective. Um, or learn about people. I was talking to a guy the other day at an event, and I'm like, okay, this guy's just a roofer. And it turned out he had a medical degree or had gone to medical school and just decided that wasn't for him. And it was like, okay, this is not just some guy who couldn't do something and so he's doing roofing. No, it's just a guy who's decided that medicine wasn't for him. Um, Very intelligent. You start to talk. He had some great questions, and we just had a really awesome conversation. It changed my perspective about him. Uh, be present. And what Ken talks about here is, forget about past behavior, focus on the present, the present experience. Along the same lines, being present and listening to what the person is saying right here and now. Um, just lift yourself from the baggage of the past, right? Things have happened in the past, and you just need to move forward. 7, offer to help them. Ask them if there's a way that you can help them. Maybe it's a project, maybe there's something that you can do, somebody you can introduce them to, information that they're looking for. Find ways to help them, because then that changes and be sincere about it, because that changes how they'll look at you, and how they look at you will change how they treat you. This reminds me of my conversation with Brian Ahern, who I've had on this program. One of the things he taught me early on, the first time we met, is his objective was to find ways for him to like me. Because if he decided he liked me, then that would come through in how he treated me, and I would reciprocate and like him in return. So offering to help is kind of one of those ways. Acknowledge people's their contribution in a corporate sense. It's easy in a corporate sense. I remember I was in the tax department of this accounting firm, and to look at the auditors, and I don't get what they do, so you just kind of diminish the value. And I'm sure they looked at us. Tax. What's the big deal on tax? But when you start to realize and get out into business and realize it's all part of the same thing, you have a real appreciation for what different people, different people do. And it's the same thing with respect to professions out there in the entrepreneurial world. We all earn our money. We all bring value to the world. We need realtors, we need mortgage lenders, we need printers, we need everybody out there. We need somebody to pick up the trash. So you just need to acknowledge people and be thankful for their contribution. Number 9, be persistent. Relationships aren't going to change overnight, especially if there's tension and it's been there for a while. Just don't. It's kind of like losing weight, right? It took you years to put on that 20 pounds, 30 pounds, whatever. It's not going to happen overnight. You just need to be persistent with that weight loss journey. It's the same thing with building a relationship. You just, where you're at today didn't just happen in one little conversation. It happened over time, and you just need to take the time to repair it, and it may not be quick and easy. And then the 10th thing Ken has is be genuine. He says none of these techniques will work if you're not genuinely interested in building a relationship. And that's true. That's got to be number one. The business, when you work for a company, it's too small to be, having infighting with people within your little kingdom, your little fiefdom there, if you will. It's just too small, and you just need to learn to get along with people. And it's the same thing in the business community. I mean, Columbus, Ohio is not a huge city. It's not New York. It's not Chicago. But it's small enough that people know one another. And I'm always running into people who know other people. And I'm thankful that I have good interactions with people. And, I have somewhat of a good reputation that precedes me. So you need to be genuine about these things, because you don't know who's connected to who. Even in big cities, I mean, the business community is not that big, and you don't know who is connected to who. So you just need to treat every connection as if it really matters, because in some sense or another it does. So just a quick rundown of Ken Lazar's article, 10 Ways to Build Positive Relationships with Difficult People. I will share a link to this, which is on his website for Ability Professional Network. And certainly I'll link to Ken when I start to post this out on social media. But use this list to build great relationships with people in your network. Difficult people who are easy to get along with. Try to be that easy to get along with person. It really makes life simpler when you have those relationships in hand.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.